contract negotiation that was going on. ESPN certainly did not want to lose her, but in the end, she made a decision to walk away from the show effective immediately.
But don't ask me the details, because I'm not going to tell y'all the details. That's none of y'all business. Oh, and I don't know the details.
He made it sound like something wild happened.
Correct.
And there's no reason for that.
Molly Qerim just exposed Stephen A. Smith in the dirtiest way possible. According to her, he sold her out for a $2 million payout, and the betrayal didn't just cost Molly her ESPN career, it humiliated her in front of the entire industry. And the wildest part? She's got receipts, leaked calls, private meetings, and even texts that point straight at Stephen A. Smith. Now everyone's asking, did he really snitch on Molly for a check, or is she setting him up to fall? Before we get into Molly's receipts, we have to take it back to September 15th, 2025, the day everything changed for Molly. Picture this. It was a random Monday, and she clocked in at work as usual. Everything is normal until she goes to her office and finds a letter waiting for her. And it's not a promotion letter, not an acknowledgement of everything she has done for the company. It's a letter effectively telling her that she's no longer going to have her job by December. They were letting her go. Molly had been on ESPN's First Take for a decade, serving fits, managing egos, and keeping the rest of the contributors in line. And suddenly, none of that mattered. She was being told to get her things and get out of the building just like that. As if that wasn't bad enough, Molly didn't even have the chance to make the announcement herself. One minute she's doing her job, and the next, news of her contract negotiations falling through was plastered on every sports journal. The headlines? Molly Qerim set to leave ESPN after contract negotiations fall through. Molly was devastated. She felt completely blindsided and took to Instagram that very evening with a statement that revealed just how deeply this news cut her. She said, "Now that the news came out earlier than I intended, and not in the way I hoped, that one line broke fans." I mean, think about it for a second. Molly had spent 10 years building First Take into the best sports show on any network, and suddenly it all came unraveling in the most public and humiliating way possible. It was clear that something was terribly wrong. But the real shocker came the following morning when Molly was nowhere to be found on First Take. Turns out she had decided to resign. Rather than quietly ride out her contract, Molly walked away on the spot. And that's when ESPN scrambled, because the network wasn't ready for Molly to flip the script, and the way they responded only made things look more suspicious. Even the official response from ESPN president Burke Magnus felt rehearsed. He said they respect Molly's decision and wish her the best in the future, but didn't say anything about the sudden nature of her exit. And that was suspicious. It wasn't the kind of farewell you give a 10-year veteran. It was too abrupt, too cold. And that's when Stephen A. Smith stepped into the frame. Because suddenly, Molly's betrayal didn't look like it came from the network alone. It looked personal. Industry insiders were calling it an emergency exit, and nobody understood that better than former ESPN host Marcellus Wiley, who broke it down in a recent live session.
So they're reporting that it's supposed to be the end of the year. Molly, by action, says it's right now. Instead of, I'm leaving now, I'm leaving right now. She made it immediate. And then Stephen A. Smith makes the statement. Now, interesting once again, see, peep all these differences, right? These contradictions in terms of how they usually move and how they're moving with Molly. Max Kellerman left. Stephen A. Smith didn't even show up for the last day. Remember that? Interesting. And we all know that typically they don't talk about talent when they're gone. They just say, thank you for your services and we wish you well. This is a little different for many reasons. So when they're trying to paint it, it looks a lot different.
That last line struck people the most. Because really, why did she choose to leave like that? Why did she come to work on Monday and then basically ghost the network on Tuesday morning? However, when Stephen A. Smith entered the picture, everything started becoming clear. Because what he said made it clear that Molly wasn't just betrayed by the network. That betrayal started from her co-host and friend of 10 years, someone she thought would always have her back. The day after Molly resigned, Stephen A. Smith appeared on First Take by himself, no Molly. Just him sitting there looking awkward as he tried to explain to the viewers why the person who had shared the stage with him for 10 years was suddenly gone. The raw emotion in his voice was undeniable, but listen closely to what he said next because that's where things started looking suspicious. Just to be clear, Stephen A. just said the details of Molly leaving ESPN were none of our business, and in the same breath said he doesn't know the details.
Molly is a co-worker. Molly is somebody that I have leaned on many occasions in the past, as she has done when it comes to me. We've been partners on the show for the last 10 years. And a lot of times some of these things happen and it's just uncomfortable to see. The details, quite frankly, are none of y'all business. But it's not as if I know all the details.
It got even shadier when he started talking about contract negotiations. He kept contradicting himself, claiming he didn't know details, then dropping details only an insider would know.
It was a contract negotiation that was going on. ESPN certainly did not want to lose her. But in the end, she made a decision to walk away from the show effective immediately, as you see from her Instagram post, Instagram story last night.
But while fans were side-eyeing him, Molly's silence spoke louder, because in her farewell post, she left out one very specific name, almost like he was in the room when the decision was being made, almost like he knew way more than anyone should know about it. But what shocked people the most wasn't what Stephen A. said, it was what Molly didn't say. In the farewell statement she released on her Instagram account, she thanked the fans, the show, and the other people she worked with. The one name she didn't mention? Stephen A. Smith. Not once. Not even in passing. To put this into context for you, hosts typically go out of their way to their co-hosts when they leave a show. When Shannon Sharpe left Undisputed, he spent 10 minutes dropping names and thanking everyone he worked with. But after working side by side with Stephen A. Smith for years, building one of the most successful shows in sports media history together, she couldn't bring herself to even mention him in her goodbye. This industry insider put it best.
Then a report comes out. That report comes out the next morning. Instead of Molly showing up to work, she puts out an Instagram post. And in that Instagram post, you guys remember, one thing she didn't mention was anybody by name, including Stephen A. Smith. Now, I've left a show or two before, and trust me, you're gonna name some names when you leave that. Just think about Shannon Sharpe when he left Undisputed. Goodness, it took about 10 minutes of all the names he dropped. That's my point. Molly didn't do that. So that lets you know already there's some friction behind the scenes.
And they're right. The way Molly exited, it was obvious that she didn't just want to go quietly. She wanted to make a statement. And what better way to make that statement than to force Stephen A. Smith, the same guy who betrayed her and ruined her career, to host the show himself and have to fumble through an explanation of why she can't be there anymore. Now, at this point, the sports media world was already buzzing with speculations, but nobody really knew what happened. But everything changed when more details started dropping from Stephen A. himself. And the more he spoke, the more it became obvious he was the one who betrayed Molly. Now here's where it gets messy, because to really get why Molly exposed Stephen A., you have to understand how much power he actually holds at ESPN. Stephen isn't just another host, he's part of the inner circle. He sits in the same rooms where they decide who gets renewed, who gets raises, and who gets cut. So when it came to money, his word mattered. Molly, on the other hand, was making around $500,000. Sounds solid, until you realize Stephen was pulling over $20 million a year. That's 40 times her salary. And even hosts on smaller shows were earning way more. So when her contract came up, she asked for what she deserved. Better pay, more opportunity, more respect. But instead of negotiating, ESPN shut her down, told her to be grateful. That's when things snapped. Molly decided she wasn't leaving quietly, and the first target was the man who betrayed her the most, Stephen A. She started retweeting posts calling him a hypocrite. One of them went viral overnight, but what really pushed her over the edge was when Stephen went on air pretending not to talk about her, while describing her situation word for word. He said some people overestimate their value and end up losing everything. Fans caught it instantly, and that's when the whole story blew open.
But I'm watching, and I've been watching over the last several years, people in this business fall by the wayside because we forget that all of us ultimately answer to people. We don't get to define our own value. We don't get to define our own worth. We don't get to sit there and summarily say, this is who I am and this is what I'm going to do. And guess what? I don't give a damn what anybody say unless you have the leverage to do it. Because business is all about leverage.
Now, this is what had fans heated. Stephen A. talking about humility. Because as you guys know, every time he's had to negotiate money, it turns into a spectacle. Back in 2009, he got dropped from ESPN after pushing too hard, then later admitted his ego cost him his job. And in 2024, he did it again. Went on a whole press run comparing himself to Dak Prescott just to force a raise. So when the same man later turned on Molly Qerim, the one person who helped him rise, fans called foul. The backlash was instant. Twitter, YouTube, podcasts, everyone was dragging him. The wildest part about all this? Ever since Stephen A. started getting dragged, he has been silent. He hasn't said anything about the Molly Qerim situation, as if he knows that silence is his best strategy right now. Anything he says will only add fuel to an already blazing flame. As for Molly, she's still not done talking. If ESPN thought she was going to go out quietly, then they thought wrong, because she's not just going to stop with Stephen A. Smith. She'll keep going until she gets to the bottom of the rot. And when that happens, it won't be just Stephen A.'s reputation on the line, it'll be the entire channel. The question now is, who's next on her hit list? Because Stephen A. is just the beginning.